Hey, good morning, guys. I actually think it's afternoon. I don't know, but I'm not going to find out yet. I'm going to do a review running montage thing, never done one before, of the RC4WD Beast, which is on the ground in behind me. Yeah. So, yeah, let's bring it in closer. The RC4WD, the Beast, all-wheel drive, 6x6, fully 4-link crawler, kind of trail truck deal. Bone stock form, save for a few minor upgrades. That white plate is just an empty servo mount. Punisher shafts on all 3 axles. Running stock electronics with a Venom Power 3000 mAh 8.4 volt nickel metal hydride battery. Bone stock in high gear. Get some decent speed. For an all-lock differential vehicle, gets great speed over rough grass with leaves. Turning radius is absolutely awful, which you can't tell, but it is. In low gear, climbing a slight rock face. Low gear itself is pretty torquey, but however, the extra weight of the 2 axles on the rear end just cannot get up a solid face like that. Even with the leaves out of the way in low gear, it can't even approach the rock face full on because the approach angle is pretty bad on it, but it just cannot get the weight of those 2 extra rear axles, or the extra rear axle and tires up there. However, with the approach angle of the rear being much better than that on the front, I'll show you that in an up-close video, or you can look past at the previous videos. The approach angle of the rear is much better. So in low gear, it can just crawl up anything. You just need a little spinning, a little steering up front, and you can climb up just about any face. You can even do the approach angle and the position of the rear axles in the back allow this vehicle with enough torque in low gear to do some pretty amazing things. In high gear on such smooth surfaces as concrete as I'm running on here, it does get decent enough speed to pick up the inside tire in a sharp enough turn. In low gear, the flex isn't fantastic, but that's most likely due to the lack of a body on there. Less weight on the front end. The rear shocks I've got pretty much tuned in, but front shocks I'm waiting to tune in until I get that body on there. It being the beginning of winter and the end of fall, most of the leaves have already fallen off the trees, under especially this beech tree. So the scale course is mostly covered in leaves, buried under leaves. Some about 3 inches thick in some areas, in the deeper areas, especially in the trench down in there. But I'm still going to show you what this thing can do even with mountains of leaves to crawl over. On most dirt trails and inclines, this vehicle can take it in high gear. Even with the leaves, produces barely any problem for this truck because of the massive traction output given by the 3 axles and the all-wheel drive. As we continue off down this section of the trail in high gear, we find that suspension articulates very well through the small stuff, and it travels well through mostly even terrain but slightly uneven terrain, much like an actual military vehicle. However, with the turning radius being so bad, it's not much well suited for really hard trail use. However, the all-wheel drive and the six-wheel drive of this truck and fully locked differentials makes this really a go-anywhere truck. Especially as shown right there, when it locked up in high gear and you shift it into low on most inclines, and it has limited problem, except when it's buried under the leaves. And then you need some momentum to carry yourself up the hill with this truck. Going at a head-on obstacle like this, where it high centers the truck, is not its strongest suit, especially when it struggles to get those rear axles up. And even when it does get the rear axles up, it has a tendency to really high center up on the axle case, even though it is a high clearance axle case, and most of the time grab something and go off the trail. The Beast, with its scale looking tires, is most suited to light flexing over dirt and small rocks, such as pebbles. In high gear it does this phenomenally. Coming around Dead Man's Corner, the steering isn't pushed that hard, but at the same time the leaves make it hard for the system to steer through. Approaching the double post bridge is especially hard in this truck, seeing that with only one steering axle and two trailing axles, it has a tendency to push the steering axle around instead of letting the axle pull the other two axles around. It takes a bit of ingenuity to get past the bridge. And a lot of backups. Coming down the slope of the bridge gives a nice chance to see the suspension articulate. Coming up the far side of the bridge is a little hard for such a big truck. As it comes up across the other two flats for bridges, you can see why it's such a challenge, is because the passenger side rail is in line with the driver's side rail on the other bridge, and vice versa. So the driver has to carefully calculate how big of a turn to make on that bridge, but with this truck you have to give it all you got. Going down a staircase isn't really much of a problem until you bottom out the plate, but since these are standard size bricks, the chassis plate does not bottom out. Entering further down the trail, kick it up into high gear. As it approaches the rock slide, literally throw it into low gear, crawl up and over. And yes, that rock on top is designed to snare axle cases, chassis plates, whatever it can. And we come around the corner towards the winding canyon. Again, a difficult obstacle for a truck with such a large turning radius. And after the canyon, the Beast makes its way down the mudslide area towards the rock field, where we truly see where it stands out. Now you see, when I said this truck stands out, I never said it stood out in a good way. Even in low gear, it still has some problems on the rocks. The main problem being the truck's long wheelbase and 2 non-steering axles that just want to push the front-facing axle into whatever it wants. That's making it easy to get stuck where you don't want to be. Leaving the rock field, this truck gets back to the terrain it's used to. Current terrain being dirt and or leaves, grass, whatever you care for, in high gear. Under the tunnel, getting stuck most likely. Across the now rotted away bridge. As the beast approaches the steep incline, the Outcry ESC that it comes with is phenomenal for hills. This is about a 30-35 degree hill, and the drag brake is holding this 8-9 pound truck in place on that hill. Moving it forward, not so much in high gear. But switching to low and it'll spin the tires all the way up that hill. And around the final turn, which again has to be made with I just made 3 backups to get around that turn. This is Iron Dragon SC. I'll see you in the next video I make. Like I said, like, subscribe, do whatever you want. Just, Jason, if you're watching this, don't do anything stupid. Anyway, thanks guys for watching. If you watched, I'll try to do more running on this truck. Comment what you want me to try with this truck. I'd love to hear your suggestions. This is Iron Dragon SC. I'll see you next time.